Afternoon and welcome to another edition of Awaken Live Q&A. My name is Garen, as I'm sure everybody knows by now. So the reason I decided to do this is, we had a lot of melting going on here yesterday and everything looked like it was going to start to warm up. And then we woke up this morning and there was another dump of snow. And I kind of said to myself, well, we're not going to be doing too much today except hanging around. So why not? Hi, Cindy. Nice to see you made it. I'm glad you figured out that time zone thing. It can be tricky. Oh, and she says hi, Kelly, too. Yeah, Kelly's sitting over on the couch. She's still suffering a little bit today. I'm still a little bit heady as well. This flu up here this year is taken everyone usually 2 or 3 weeks. I think we're lucky to get away with a week solid of it. So, hello, Kim. Nice to see you, too. Glad you can make it on time. Some people have been having really real problems with the time zone, and we're the same time as Los Angeles as far as time zones go, if that helps. And I personally use a little app so I can keep track of multiple time zones just for benefit in communicating with various people. So today we're going to talk about a few things, and these all came up on the list, and as I said, we pinned in the announcements, there's a topic and then a kind of a basic questions. So if you have just simple questions you want answers to or things you feel worthy of a more in-depth discussion, that's where they can go. Hello, Jackie. Jackie's here too. She says hi, Kelly. Kelly's on the couch again today, and Debbie's here as well. Hello, Debbie. Great to see you all. So we're going to start today with Sue's question, and Sue was talking about letting go of fear and man-made spiritual fears. And, this all plays into this ego thing again. And, of course, anytime we're fearing anything, it represents what future worries. And as I mentioned in more than one video, we have literally right in our genetic material, Jackie's here too. Hi, Jackie. Good to see you. We have, that was the second one, sorry. we have right in our genetic material this racial memory, and Kelly and I were talking about it briefly today. She's reading Conversations with God, Book 4, Awaken the Species, which I have yet to read. My wife just keeps shaking her head, though, and she says, you could have wrote this book in your sleep. And that's good. Because we're all on the same page anyway. We're all of us who are waking up. We all know where we need to go as a species, and this is a beautiful thing about it. But let's talk about this fear thing, okay? This fear is the fear of the future, and it's tied up in death and in hell. The concept of what's going to happen when we die. And when I'm talking about death, I'm talking about the death of anything. Yes, ultimate death that ego fears, which is the cessation of its life as far as it thinks. Okay? And then there's the little deaths that we experience as things change. Every time something changes, we die in some way. The ego dies. The identification disappears and it dies. And this what stops me from writing my book, because I like to talk more than I like to type. No, really, I do have plans. What I'm going to do is I'm going to replay all these videos to Dragon Naturally Speaking at some time and let it record it all and then throw it all into text, and then I'll weed through that and put together the book. It is in the future there somewhere. So this fear, this future fear, of course, like I said, all of our modern Western-based societies have this Christian God hammered into us, this notion of hell, of good and evil, and it is so deep in our psyche in some cases. You don't even have to have a recent heritage of religious upbringing. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the Christian God. It can be any of the Abrahamic faiths which condemn the earth to doom and gloom and the bulk of the human race is going to go straight to hell. And we talk about it and we laugh about it now when we wake up, but as a young Catholic, of course, I took it very seriously, and I was very afraid of it at the same time. And those fears, okay, the fear of an uncertain future, of not knowing, are future projections. It's all ego. What you need to do is recognize those fears for what they are. You see, everything that happens to us, everything that occurs to us, is speaking to us all the time. And when we slow down, when we allow ourselves to become a little more expansive and open and watchful of what life is bringing in, and watchful of our egoic reaction to it, we can see the seeds in there of the answers already given. And of course, in the case of those fears, what you must do is return to the present moment. Recognize those fears are not your fears. They're the fears of a collective. And you don't have to entertain those fears. Return to your breath, return to the present. Sue speaks about connecting the heart, with the heart of human love. Well, there really is no such thing as human love. We have a concept of what love is. In reality, what love truly is the 100% recognition of yourself in another. The 100% recognition of that. You have to really think about that, what that means. It is far beyond anything on the physical level. It goes far deeper than that. And there are very few people even capable of demonstrating absolute love. Christ was about the closest we would have, or Buddha perhaps. Okay, but even Christ, he still managed to get up enough anger to whip those people out of the temple. That's for sure. It's not that we're too small to understand. It's that the false identification that we've taken on. Okay, this, here's the reality of it, and most people just simply cannot accept this. We're not the ones living lives. We're not. There is one creative sea of consciousness, manifested down into unlimited numbers of conscious shards, and those conscious shards are manifesting experiences within the physical realm, happenings. And that ego is nothing more than an artificial intelligence, a computer attached to a hard drive that's absorbing everything. Now, that doesn't limit our existence here or what we can do here, but it is a point of view we always must remain aware of. A reminder that this is indeed a game. We're here to have some fun. We're here to learn, to love, to learn how to love, to learn how to create consciously, and to grow in awareness. And that awareness is actually happening first in a spiritual realm, and then into a conscious realm, and then into a physical realm. Right? It filters right down. So when it comes to fears, hello, Marianne, nice to see you too. When it comes to fear, return to the present and understand, just remind yourself that you're telling yourself a lie, because of course the fear is negative, and there's nothing that you are that could possibly be harmed. You have always existed and you always will exist. At no time have you not been manifest in some form. At no time. Allow the fear to wash over you and to pass away. Take some conscious breaths, become present. Fear has never jumped out of a bush and attacked anybody yet. Walk right past that. Wrap that supposed darkness you see in yourself, or darkness in your future, or darkness in your beliefs, or darkness in a worry. Just wrap it in awareness and love, and say, you know what, it's okay. It's okay to feel that way. No matter what, we're still going to walk through it. We're not going to shrink back. This is part of coming into your power as an infinitely powerful spiritual being. Always fall back on that. Always understand that no matter how difficult your ego may think of what is in front of you, you just have to remember for a moment that there's a much grander presence that you truly are, that sees no obstacles, just another experience that it can relish. And that can help walk you through that. I hope that is helpful, Sue. When it comes to love, what we need to do first is be able to love ourselves fully, of course. You need to be 100% okay with you. And once you are complete and whole, when you feel whole, when you need no one else's company, but you simply enjoy the company of others, when you need no outside approval, yet you smile when someone does approve, and you smile when someone does not approve. When you fulfill these base conditions in your existence as a whole being, this is that is the time when your love will be as close as it possibly can be to that of the true definition of love. Because in that you will see yourself in everyone, and you will love yourself in everyone as well. We're going to move on to the second question, and this question was from Debbie, and she wanted to talk more about the shadow and the dark night of the soul. And people do talk about embracing shadow work or the shadow, and some concrete examples of what shadow work it can be. Okay, well, the only real shadow work to do, as I've said before, is meditation. And giving up your shadows. You see, those things within you we see as shadows are not actually shadows. They're just dissonant energy vibrations because of our misinterpretation of those particular events in our lives. The ego so easily perceives itself hurt, and yet you have to ask and dig deeply and contemplate, where can you find that hurt? Where can you find that ego that's thinking it's hurt? When the temple is damaged, when the body is damaged, the ego feels it's been damaged. But the only thing that's actually happening is there's an electrical signal being sent that's reporting something. The ego interprets it. It's the same signal that is interpreted as pleasure in other circumstances. Oh, Janet came back on. Yay. So when we're talking about embracing our darker side, we have to embrace the whole of ourselves. And as I said, as above, so below. The universe is a dichotomy. It is a function of two, always. Our ego is the same way. Our ego is naturally split. Freud, kind of caught on to this, and Carl Jung did, of course, as well. And in that, you can think of it as it's the same ego. Okay, there's no different ego. It's the same ego, but there is a softer, creative essence, and there is a more actionable, destruction creative, an action essence. And that active essence and that creative essence form your ego as well, as they form the two hemispheres of your brain. as are formed into the domination of your left or right hand. Left-handed people are usually highly creative, more so in comparison to right-handed, on average. All of this is reflected as above, so below. So, of course, you're going to have one half of you that when you come up into a situation, that half of you is staying aware. That half of you stays closer to being in alignment with your higher self, because it is not the piece of you that talks. It is a piece of you that creates pictures and sees in movies. Okay, and that piece of you, it works in harmony with the other piece. You need both pieces together. Well, one is not to be thought of as dark. You know, so in any situation, you always have the side of you that wants to react from a higher source, and then you have the angry little kid side that's has a lot of action and voice in it, and can sometimes be screaming in your head and banging on the door. It wants in and wants to get in there and do some damage or ruffle some feathers, or how dare you for how you treated me routine. And again, with everything else, it all comes down to choice. The part of you that you perceive as dark can only be brought into the light and dealt with through love. You have to love yourself. You have to love those parts of you. You have to see what the gift is in that supposed darkness that you perceive, and learn to use the gift in it, and just bring the other into the light of awareness all the time. Just see it in you and be okay with it there and do nothing about it. It's really far easier than people would make it. And of course, that's ego again. Ego always thinks everything has to be complicated, because as long as it's complicated, there's a way out. Right? And Kelly and I have talked about this when we see these courses being offered. You know, this course will take you a long way towards conscious awakening. You know, $1,600 plus airfare and hotel costs and food on top of that. And we're looking at each other going, we can't afford that. Well, why would we ever? And who could? How is this going to wake up the planet? It's really simple. That little 4-page course, 30 days with your best effort every single day. That will bring most of the dark side back out into the light, naturally, the only way it can. When we try to drag a piece of ourselves kicking and screaming out of us as if we don't want it anymore, and try to remove it, excise it from us, we fragment ourselves. That energy is not any different. It's just vibrating in a dissonance. And the more you bring it into awareness, the more it can start vibrating into a higher level and transmuting and raising your vibration in the process. I hope that really does it in for the dark night. You know, this is a place we're all in a lot of ways, or that we stay in for long periods of time. And the only way out, of course, is to understand that it's simply our ego, and we can surrender at every minute. Yes, exactly, Debbie. Hold all aspects of yourself in love. Love every bit of it. You know, like I said yesterday, I have a soldier side of me, right? I was a special forces sniper. And I spent a lot of time in the jungle doing a lot of dirty deeds. And that side of me has a wonderful gift in it. And that gift is the ability to persevere, to determine a course and then walk that course in such a way, as I said, that God itself would not even dare to step in the way. And that's the surety of being that our Creator wants us to work or to walk this earth in. That same surety. And of course, tempered by not the better half, but the the creative open half of myself, that which wishes to serve at all costs. So you can have both sides and they can work in harmony together. You just have to learn to keep the genie in the bottle. And it is so easy, Kim. You're absolutely right. When we're children, we naturally understand all these things. You look at the freedom that 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old, 7-year-old children can play with in that freedom. And this is the boundless state of being that we naturally understand, and we lose our understanding of it. It gets covered up by the false construct, this sense of I that we put on top of it. You see, before that, we weren't really concerned with the I. There wasn't all the babble going on. Janet has a question to, okay, this is a good one. So we're going to get onto one of those interesting subjects, and I'm going to get shot for this because I'm going to take all the air out of the bubble as usual. We're going to talk about the Illuminati and 9/11 and the whole terrorist stuff that's going on. Okay, so of course the Illuminati, in reality, in Bavaria in 1776, the actual Illuminati was formed, and the Illuminati was simply a group of people who said, you know what, we've had enough of the abuse, we've had enough of the abuse of state power and the capitalistic control and the control by religion over the population, and we're going to form a group to try and head that off, to try and push it in the right direction without controlling it. And that was the original Illuminati. It's really only a couple 100 years old. And the what happened, of course, is the Roman Catholic Church really hated that idea, okay? And so just a few years later, 1784, so not even a decade after it was formed, the then ruler of the time was convinced by the Catholic Church to put out an edict banning all such groups, including Freemasonry and the like. I mean, the Freemasons are far older than the Illuminati for sure. And to be honest, it's all just misdirection, okay? There is a rule you learn, and I learned this from being in the Special Forces. And being in the Special Forces is a little different than being a regular soldier. It does not mean any less, okay? And, I really despise war and all the things war represent. And the reason I do is because I've been there and I see what's truly going on. Okay, but we're gonna talk about this as far as it goes into what's actually happening in the world, okay? And as a Special Forces soldier, we are privy to a little more intelligence sometimes than the average person gets their hands onto. And in almost every situation I have ever been in, the stated reasons why we were doing what we were doing never turned out to be the truth. They only turned out to be possibly partial truths. There was always something going on, and it always had to do with minerals, with oil, with gold, with someone who could promise to provide access. This is what happened over and over and over again, and we keep buying it up. This power and control structure has been around since the birth of the Industrial Revolution, it's true, and long before that. We as a human species are vastly controlled. We walk around asleep for the most part and think that our societies and the way we're all living, with people struggling and scraping to get by, under some idea that there is a lack on this planet is all part of that power and control structure. And I want to make this really clear. Turn your gaze away from it. Don't give it your time and attention. People cannot be forced to wake up. 9/11 was a planned event that was perpetrated by powers within the U.S. government against the U.S. people and against all people of the world. It's crystal clear. We've had poorer built buildings than that burning for 24 to 36 hours straight and still not falling over. Every structural engineer worth his salt, every professional pilot, every person in every field of construction and aviation has all said the same thing. They dropped the buildings. It was all planned. Now you ask why? Well, why? Because fear. As soon as you put fear into a populace, as I've said before, okay, you don't need to take away their rights. They'll hand them to you. The whole populace will hand their rights over. Yep, let's make a terror act, okay, where now you can imprison someone without even charging them. And throw away the key for all that cares. You never even have to take them to a courtroom. And we as a society are the ones who've allowed that fear in our own unconsciousness and our own blindness to overcome our sense of reason, to overcome our ability to see. And of course, here's the issue. Cognitive dissonance will not allow societies as a whole to look back on these events and recognize it for what it is. Why? Because it means too much that they're afraid of. What do you do when you know your government will wholesale slaughter its civilians to push an agenda? What do you do? You know, anyone who has seen the videos, as Kim mentions here about the Pentagon, I mean, it's crystal clear that there was no plane that flew into the Pentagon. That was a cruise missile. The only video that ever came out supports that. Look at the dimensions of the hole. When you know, this is why when I talk about the power and control structure, you know, if we go back to 1961, Eisenhower, at the end of his presidency, gave a speech on television the night before he was to retire. And in that speech, he warned against the military-industrial complex. He warned against, he came out and said, it is only an aware and knowledgeable public, an aware and knowledgeable society that will be able to do anything at all to stop the military-industrial complex. You see, there's a very fine line between defense and tyranny. And the tyranny is not to the people outside. The tyranny is to those who are being defended. The populace itself. You think you live in a free society and you don't. You just don't. It may look like it, but it's not. Look closer. But again, I want you to turn completely away from all of that. Anything that is contrary to natural law, anything that is contrary to the laws of nature, has the seeds of its own destruction built in. We need do nothing. As I said, these are edifices built on old ideas, old fears, old ways of thinking. And yes, the power and control structure wishes to carry them on, but we have to learn to stop reacting. We have to learn to not buy into it anymore. We have to learn to put the weapons down and say no more. We as North America could be the first part of this planet to invite the entire globe to the table and say, you know what, no more. Let's put them all down. Let's just put them all away. We don't have to do this anymore. But see, we keep teaching our children the same thing that we learned. We keep instilling them with our beliefs. The belief that we have a right to go kill someone because some old man in an office somewhere says that they're the enemy. Who is it that goes to do the killing? I was 16 and a half when I joined the French Foreign Legion. You have soldiers over in Africa who are 12. Where does it end? It doesn't matter where it ends. We can't do anything about that. It's out of our control. What we do have control is where we're going to start. And it starts with spreading compassion and love and registering what's happening, but not giving it any more attention than it's due, and instead focus on waking people up. Not waking up to the horrors around them, waking them up to the love and the compassion and the capability we have as human beings to empathize with each other and love each other and recognize our wholeness within each other. And Cindy's absolutely right. We add more and more money into the military budget at the same time that we can't feed, and I talked about this here in Canada, okay, we're buying warplanes from Australia, but we can't feed and clothe our homeless people. We are being controlled. And Debbie has a very valid point. In school, and what they teach in school regarding war versus nonviolence, of course, it's all about the war. And why? Because that's our history. But we see, we don't teach our children properly. And we're going to talk about the school system in another video, because that is a whole video in yourself. But our children represent an evolution of the species. When we inflict our lower consciousness beliefs on them, beliefs that we haven't even honestly taken a close look at and seen if they're valid or hold true or should be believed anymore. And keep in mind the difference between belief, which always changes, and faith, which is simply trust. So these cycles will continue. As long as we keep raising children in the same way that we've been raised, as long as we keep doing so unconsciously as a society, it will continue. And I understand Debbie. She'd rather be taking, doing lessons on Gandhi. I get that. But here's where you can become a little creative with the role, and maybe you can teach the war side, but instead of just having it as a rote thing, you could ask the children what they would do, what they would have done to not, or to have avoided the war. This is a great way to take what has to be taught and turn it into the right direction. The same thing happened to my wife. My wife goes to is it a preschool? It's a preschool she goes to, and she does a piano lesson for about 10 kids. And one of the songs that the kids wanted to do was called the Bumblebee song. And Kelly was reading the lyrics to me, and the lyrics were all about squishing bumblebees. And I said to her, I said, no. I will not partake in teaching children to kill bees. This is unconscious behavior. I don't care how cute the song looks. The song is unconscious. And I grabbed the song and I tore it up and I wrote a new set of lyrics. Focused on loving the bee. Focused on recognizing what the bee does. Focused on seeing how furry and how beautiful it was as it sat on your arm, and that if you sat there still and calm and just loved it, it would simply fly away after the visit. These are the sort of things that we can do, and we can do in every moment of our lives, not to fight up against, because when we do that, all we do is we hold it here. Violence and pushing up against and force will never get rid of violence and force, and might is right. What gets rid of it is that spaciousness, that willingness to stand there, as Gandhi and his followers did at the mines. We always have that choice. We have the choice how to make our stand, and our stand should never be against something. It should always be for something. It's a profound difference to keep in mind, okay? Never stand against. When you stand against, you just perpetrate what you're against. Learn to stand for something. You know, if you see injustice around you, stand for justice. If you see people suffering, stand for ending suffering. We have to move our world forward in a positive harmonic vibration of always climbing upwards, of always evolving forwards, of always engulfing more, opening more, never closing down and pushing back. So I hope that does kind of take a look at that, and we're going to end with the terrorist scare, okay? And this is the same sort of thing. This whole thing about terrorism is again another lie, and we're being sold it by the same power and control structure that owns most of the media. You know, I have been over most of this planet. And not as a tourist, as a down in the dirt, in the back streets, walking with a backpack, learning your language, learning what you believe, eating what you eat, and asking you to show me your wisdom sort of way. And I have never met a peoples on this planet who had any other desire than for peace, a level of prosperity and comfort so they could live happily, and a future for their children. Now, who's taking that away? All of us. We've already mortgaged our grandchildren's resources. And you know, a lot of people sit there and they'll say, well, it just seems hopeless. What do you do? It's in the greatest dark that the light waits for always to shine. And shine it will. And shine we will, and we do. Don't pay attention to that other side of things. It doesn't bear anything more than a passing glance. Stand for something that you believe in. That's what makes a difference. Sandra, this is the last question for today, and I thank you all for paying attention for so long, and I hope we haven't bored anyone today. Sandra says, hello, Sue. Sandra says, can you forgive someone because you understand the place they're coming from, but yet not forgive them for the horrible act? And you have the right point here. I mean, you always separate the person from the act. You can forgive the person because you understand that what they're doing comes out of their own place of suffering. You know, as I've said before, we don't often think of what the sexual abuser, like for example, my dad sexually molested both my sister and myself. And my mother, in a fit of rage one day, had let me know that the reason I existed is because my dad had raped her with a telephone cord, strangling her around her neck. And you know, when I was a young person, of course, you would take that pretty hard. You know, now I totally get how all those things helped form the path I needed to be on, helped form the personality I needed to have to survive and to grow. And, you know, as much as I abhor what they did, I love them. I still love my dad. Would I invite him into my house and have him over for tea? Not likely. And this is really what we need to understand about forgiveness. Okay, forgiveness is for you. It's for you to understand that it was never personal. That if you weren't there, the identity you think you are, whether it's Garen or Kelly or Sue or Joe or Frank or Janet, whatever, if the forgiveness allows you to understand that if you weren't there, it would have happened to whoever else was there. It wasn't personal. And in that, you can forgive the person. But depending on what they have done, the action that's happened, you don't have to, like the action really has nothing to do with forgiveness per se. The action decides the new boundaries that you're going to choose to make for yourself based out of that action. So you can forgive the person who sexually abuses, but that does not mean you need to have that abuser in your life in any way at all. Your right, your space, your sanctity of being, your feeling of safety, that's important. But that doesn't mean you haven't forgiven them. You know, as I said, forgiveness really is for us, and forgiveness comes down ultimately to the understanding that it wasn't personal. And the reason this is so important, okay, you can no longer hold a victim mentality when you understand it was not personal. There was nothing about you that made it happen. There was nothing about you that was wrong. There was nothing about you that brought it on. There was nothing about you that could have done anything about it. It was all about them. And when you understand that and you forgive them, you're also forgiving yourself because you understood that you had no role in it whatsoever, other than to be the person standing there at the time. But it could have been someone else. And that can determine for you where you set your boundaries. And when you do so with this person, you will do so out of an objective state of mind. You won't be subjectively angry with them anymore. You'll just be, listen, this is my safety zone. This is what I feel. And that's where you stay, at that level away. Who knows? Years down the road, things may change, or they may not. Ultimately, we need to do our best to always separate what happens with someone and the actions they're taking, okay? Because all these actions are a cry for help. You know, the person who's sexually abused likely was abused themselves. And no one saw it, and no one caught it. And we have to end the cycle, which means we have to stop the abuse out of love for the abuser. But we can do so more lovingly when we understand that it wasn't actually personal and that it was indeed a cry for help. I love you all, and it's so wonderful to have you all here today, and I hope we've covered off these questions well enough, and I look forward to many more questions appearing. and us doing this again tomorrow. So pile some questions in there. This was kind of a bonus session, and we will be back on this tomorrow for 1 o'clock. And as I said, much love, peace to you, namaste, and good night for now.